So welcome to another episode of The Shredder Show, and today's absolute pleasure is having him on a podcast for the second time is a man who's an absolute legend. I had the pleasure of training with in person, Mr. Milos Sarcev. So thank you very much for your time, Milos.
Thank you, Charlie, for inviting me. I had a great pleasure meeting you and training you and getting to know you. So, of course, anytime you're ready, I would be ready for you. You know, we can cover. Last time we talked more about muscle building. I don't know what we're going to talk now, but in any way, I'm always ready to share my experiences and knowledge.
100%. And it's I always talk about training with you, and I think there was a bit which was filmed at Muscle Works where you were sadistically killing me on doing a guillotine chest press with a massive smile on your face, and you were genuinely loving life. So that will always be a memory I'll always remember.
I'm loving it right now. It's reminding me. I mean, listen, let's face it. A lot of people are going to the gym to be babysitted, to be, tap on the shoulder and you did great. No, I'm an elite coach, and I know whoever I train, they want a maximal results. I've seen the fire in you. I've seen your commitment, and you're ready for challenges. So yeah, every single set we did, I push it to the limit. And I wasn't laughing like, oh yeah, sadistically, I'm taking that. It's just like, I know the results. Okay. And you push through the barrier. You probably went somewhere you've never been before. Right. And this is for me kind of training that I always utilize. Lately, recent years, I soften up a little bit and I let people get away with it. But in honesty, I mean, if I'm going to push you, every time you get on the gym floor, it's just like being in a ring with Mike Tyson or whoever.
The way I think about it, it's almost like going into battle, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, for me, the most impressive set you did was that shoulder giant set. I mean, back was good too, but shoulder giant sets I remember very well. I remember shine in your eyes and shock, like, oh shit. Yeah.
Out of interest, who is the hardest training person you've ever trained with?
Seriously, without a doubt, it's Hiratara Yamagishi. I mean, I train many people, but he has that samurai spirit, and this is the first day. I mean, the guy came completely unprepared to my gym 2006, and I was training Chris Dim, and he just showed up there. So, okay, great, get in. I mean, he just changed the clothes and started training. The first workout, I put him to the same giant sets, crazy workout. He never complained, and there's a moments that you can see, like, you see a lot of people, and you're a coach yourself, so you can confirm this. There's a difference from mental and physical failure. A lot of people fail mentally, and then they fail physically because of it. Hida is the one that would never mentally fail, so he keep going. For example, you've seen this even in a training camp. I could have some guy doing like 6 reps, like is nothing, and then 7th rep he dies. Okay, that's a mental failure. It's not physical, right? So you can see the accumulation of effort and now pushing to the limit, and maybe you can complete another rep or 2 or 3. But those people, they would do easy, whatever amount of reps, and then die on the next one. This is not physical failure. You just meant it's okay, that's it. It hurts too much. I don't want to do it, and then let me fail. But, so these are kind of reps, and, I'm doing this for 40 years. If you try to pull that with me, I know it's fake. So I would not let you, fake it. So I would maybe help and then force you to do another 2, 3, 4. And let me tell you, Hiratara, even I trained with him yesterday. It's still same fire going, 47 years of age. I trained him with Dennis Poff, Dennis James, Sylvia Samuel, there was Joel Stubbs, Johnny Jackson. I mean, they all pretty much, I had to take a hat off to him because he would just go for it. He was not the strongest one, but he had always that never die attitude.
It's a mindset thing, really, isn't it?
It is.
You can't teach
really,
that.
Mindset, and therefore you connect that mindset with, mental failure. If your mindset is, there is no way I'm going to back it off until I die, you keep doing it, right? So this should be a mental state going into the set. And like I said before, I always ask this from the guys, and somebody gives me anything less. Okay, Mark Coles, right?
Yeah, I know Mark very well.
Okay, So Mark can confirm. I don't know who he was, with there. I actually kicked him out. The guy that was with him wasn't trying hard enough. I said, okay, get out. Come back when you're ready to train, because I don't want him to influence Mark, right? You want to be inspired, not
was it Jordan Peters out of interest? Did Mark and Jordan come to you at one point?
Yeah. Mark and Jordan, they came to Serbia, and I'm sure that Jordan doesn't like to talk much about it, because Jordan is a powerhouse, one of the strongest guys I've ever seen. And then of course I took him out of his element, put him on the giant sets, and we actually had some videos when I told him to close his eyes, right, and just keep pushing. And he was pushing this incline bench press machine. There was nothing on it, right? Nothing on it. But he was so mentally, like, oh, this is crazy. This is, a failure. And then I told him, open the eyes. And then he realized he's pushing nothing. And it was like, oh my God. But I love Jordan. I mean, you see, he wanted a challenge. He can probably lift 3 times as much as I could ever lift, right? So he let me show him this giant sets and volumization principles, and he was game. I love it. And Mark is an athlete. All his life he was an athlete, so there's no quitting in Mark.
100%, it's mindset. Now, today's podcast, obviously, last time we mainly covered maximal muscle building. Today I wanted to go more down a maximal fat loss approach, and
yes,
with a lot of people in lockdowns or over the world, I think it's probably easier for a lot of people to go down a fat loss route than necessarily bulking up. Did you have like specific protocols you used with people when you were starting your diet in terms of nutrition and cardio at the beginning? Would you try and always start from quite a high base in terms of calories and things from that side of things?
Well, last time we talked about the muscle building, right? And I would always say about the approach. In order to get somewhere, you know exactly how to get there, right? So if you're wandering around, it's going to take you forever. So I always like to have the most effective way, maximally beneficial. For obviously muscle building, we would have to be in a caloric surplus. We have to have a correct stimulation, sufficient amount of protein, building material, and that's how you can expect to grow. Now, when we talk about a fat loss, we're not just talking about the weight loss. And a lot of times when you go on the podcast and YouTube videos, there's a lot of those weight loss clinics and doctors talking about just general weight loss. This is not what we are interested in, because they tremendously catabolize the muscle tissue. They lose the weight, but they lose their metabolically active tissue muscle with it. They shut down the metabolism. They lose the weight in that process. But then right after 2 months, 3 months, 4 months later, I don't know how long they can manage it, they have that yo-yo effects, and then they regain more fat than before. So for me, that was never an option. For me, starvation, extreme caloric restriction, or this intermittent fasting idea was always nonsense, because first thing is, I never, ever, ever, ever want to be catabolic, to catabolize my muscle tissue. It's metabolically active tissue, and many times when they ask me, what is the best fat burner? Muscle tissue. Build more muscle, you're going to burn more fat.
Right answer.
This is how it is. So would I want purposely lose my muscle tissue in process of losing the weight? Hell no. And I've seen that this is happening with people that have a high caloric deficit. So just like for muscle building, I would first calculate my basic metabolic rate, my physiological needs, and then everything else that I'm doing, exercises, physical activity, I would add, all the components, and we'll see what is my caloric requirement to maintain. Okay, so if I now want to lose, I have to create some metabolic changes and some deficiency in calories, but I would want to analyze deeply. So I have diet. There's not 1 week, 1 month, 3 months diet. It's a daily diet, 24 hours a day. If I know my caloric needs, I can create my fat burning phases and then my maintenance phases and anabolic phases. So even in a greatest diet that you're trying to lose as much body fat as you want, as you need, I would still have that anabolic phase we talked last time in muscle building, which is right before, during, and right after the training. At that time, I want to supply all the nutrients that we need, amino acids, and enough glucose, all the beneficial supplements to push it into the muscle tissue that we are training. So at that time, we're going to stop fat burning, okay? But we're going to just feed the muscle, stimulate the muscle, and possibly even, make more muscle tissue at that period. But the remainder of the day, I would, probably take at least one or possibly two fat burning phases when I'm going to create caloric deficit. I'm going to cut out the carbs. I'm going to have no influence of insulin that can inhibit the fat burning. So it will be in a caloric deficit performing cardiovascular activity, right? Cardio. And as you know, the cardio does burn fat as a substrate, as energy, fatty acids, not the glucose. So if I'm going to be 200-300 calories deficient in my needs, and I'm going to then do extra cardio that burns another 300-400 calories extra, this is going to go straight from our body fat reserves. I mean, after overnight fast, when you didn't have nutrients, waking up in the morning, your blood is not supplied with any nutrients, amino acids floating, glucose or anything. It's normal blood sugar level is 70 to 90 milligrams per deciliter. You can calculate how little glucose that would be. So at that time, I would want aerobic activity. So just recently, I have that discussion with a few people about should you do high intensity cardio? Should you go 60, 70, 80, 90% the maximum heart rate? And I said, hold on, you guys are all experts. So what is the fat burning zone for cardio? 60, 65%, okay? That would be exclusively fat burning. And then if they go with this respiratory exchange ratio, that respiratory RQ coefficient, it's 0.7. If it's at 0.7, you're burning just fat. If you're increasing the intensity, you're going to be increasing that quotient. So it's going to be 0.8. So you're going to be burning both glucose and fatty acids. So now, if you're burning the glucose, you didn't eat anything overnight. You didn't eat anything this morning. So it's going to have to, create the glucose. And there's no glucose. It's going to probably have to break down the muscle tissue. And this is why we have many examples. I'm sure you as a coach, some guys or girls tell you, oh yeah, when I do cardio, I lose size, especially like legs and stuff. Yeah, I mean, it is catabolic activity. If you try to push this high intensity on an empty stomach, what was the purpose of doing this in the first place? Oh, to burn fat. Okay, then burn fat. If 65% maximum heart rate is burning fat, low intensity cardio, do just that. Okay, so this is what I had, many times conflict with some other coaches. Yeah, if somebody doesn't have much time to diet down and they kill their metabolism with the wrong diets, and you want to elevate their metabolism, that high intensity cardio does elevate a little bit more, but a little bit at the expense of the muscle tissue. But sometimes client that needs to be ready, you have no choice but sacrifice some muscle tissue to get him ready, right? So this is compromises. I always talk about ideal situation. I want maximal benefits. So if I'm talking about maximal benefits, I wouldn't do the high intensity cardio. I would just do the low impact, initially. So that will 1,000,000% guarantee burn some fat from my body fat storage, because there was no dietary fat around. That's going to initiate my fat burning zone, so I can check it. Then I have a maintenance phase, and maintenance phase can be really per caloric requirement, or you can also make a little bit more caloric deficit. So next meals, right, all the way until the training time, you can still create a little bit caloric deficit. I would still go with the no carbohydrates. You know that I'm big on insulin, carbohydrates, you know, muscle contraction, but that's for my anabolic phase. For throughout the day, I would just keep no carbs because I can, you know, just keep utilizing fatty acids as my energy. That 0.7 respiratory exchange ratio, it does make a difference. It does make a difference. I've seen it all the time. I mean, I would see you probably as one of those guys because you are very lean, very muscular. You have a good metabolism. You can probably get away, like I did, with the carbs as well. I could maintain it with the carbs, you know, or I can, you know, create a little bit deficit, you know, from meal to meal at that time. Some of us, you know, as Charles Poliquin used to say, you're lucky bastards. You guys can get away with it. But in general, when somebody is really focusing on losing body fat, I would stay away from carbs until the meal before the training, during a training, and meal after training. That's when I would focus on my anabolic phase. At night, we have a possibility for one more fat burning phase. And I'm sure if you follow training programs of Ronnie Coleman, of Jay Cutler back in the day, I mean, we're talking about absolute mass monsters, right? But you can hear them doing 2 hours of cardio. Jay Cutler even sometimes 3 hours of cardio, right? And Ronnie, because he was police officer, if you remember, he would do morning and evening. So this is that fat burning phase. And if you have fat to lose, you got to do it. It's not going to just disappear, right? You can, you know, sit down and pray that, okay, please melt off the fat. You have to melt it yourself.
It's interesting you say that because I think a lot of people get too afraid of doing too much cardio and thinking they're gonna whimper away. And actually, interesting what you say about people going catabolic, and in particular losing leg tissue. The worst example I find is that with people, particularly women, who have a fiction for loving the step meal, and their heart rate's way too high, like 150, 160, 170, and they wonder why their legs and their ass just falls away.
Exactly, you nailed it. This is exactly. But you see, we have a lot of intelligent people and educated people and coaches and athletes. They just, for whatever reason, block their mind and they don't want to think. Your answer is right there. Just, you said it right there. Okay, if I go to the 150, you know, beats per minute heart rate, you know, I'm dying there. This is muscular work, and you're not burning fat anymore. You know, so yeah, especially, you know, like guys, not so much girls, but guys that don't have legs to begin with, right? The ones that you would like to put them more legs, you know, and so don't want to do cardio. Don't want to, if you do the correct cardio, it's going to have zero influence on your muscle mass. But if you, you know, do these kind of things, and they do it without thinking, right? And then when I tell them, they say, oh yeah, I know I'm doing it wrong. What do you answer for the person, intelligent person that tells you, no, I know I'm doing it wrong? I just walk away. I don't even answer anything.
They're the definition of uncoachable.
Yeah, you know, but sometimes you have to be sarcastic. Sometimes you have to, you know, slap them on or repeat the question so they have to answer themselves. Oh, I know I'm doing it wrong. Okay, one more time. I know I'm doing. So are you going to do something about it? You know.
100%. One of the things you were obviously very famed for, Milos, was your midsection and phenomenal core you had, which obviously some of that is due down to genetics, but also obviously the way you trained in your nutrition. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Okay. As far as nutrition, yes. You know, if you go down to super low body fat, super thin skin, then all the musculature is gonna, you know, be emphasized. But for abs in particular, and I promise you that I didn't have like genetically deep abs. I mean, I had okay. You can see, you know, in the beginning of my career, I was training karate first and then judo, and then of course, you know, when you train judo, you do a lot of core strengthening. And I mean, I had some but it was more sit-ups type and all that stuff that didn't really make my abs deep. When I started training, I had pleasure of seeing some guy. He was professor and a gymnast, and oh my God, he had like craziest abs. And all I see him always do it is hanging leg raises. And as he was doing shirtless, right? So you can see with every rep, you know, you can see stretching, creating that gap between abdominal wall, deeper, 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 deeper. And then, of course, I start doing it because, you know, monkey see, monkey do. You see something, oh, I like it, so monkey's going to do it. And I start getting a great abs, right? And then I combine, of course, what else exercise can really, you know, create that stretch? The abdominal wall, like if you do the sit-ups and crunches, you're usually limited with the bench or the floor, so you don't overextend and you go like extra 20, 30%, right? So, and this is what it's at. High pulley cable crunches, you can have that stretch. And I've seen it, dramatic difference with so many people. But you see, in 1987, I came to the States, and then 88, I came back to Serbia, and I was in some gym in Belgrade, and I was doing these kind of things. And then a couple of years later, I come back to a Serbian championship. I was guest posing, and God damn, I mean, there was like every Serbian competitor on the stage had you know, crazy abs like me, right? And of course, they were all doing it. And, you know, so it's not just anecdotal evidence or something. I promise you, if you guys, you know, want a deep abs, first you have to visualize it, you have to feel it. Okay, somebody's going to say, if you do the hanging leg raises, your hip flexors take over. Yeah, it's assisting muscle. But if you feel that stretch between the abs and you squeeze from the abs, not from the hip flexors, when you finish the set, you feel like somebody vacuumed the stomach, and then the skin is pushing towards the abs. I've seen it happen over and over, that you can dramatically improve your midsection with these exercises. And I would do it every single day. I would do the 3 supersets before every workout. So, and I was training twice a day, 6 days a week back in the day. But then closer to contest, I would do 3 sets before, 3 sets after, right? So when you do that, you're constantly in a mind-muscle connection, controlling the abs. You always glue your stomach to your spine, so to speak, so you have a flat stomach, and you can feel that, you know, a separation. Let's face it, I don't know how many pro bodybuilders you know right now that are competing. Tell me, when was the last time that you saw them doing abs in a gym?
Very, very rarely. Very, very few of them you actually see train them.
Yeah. What sense does that make?
And when you think about it as well from a logical point of view, physiologically, that's the core of your physique, which stabilizes your rib cage and your pelvis, which underpins every exercise you do.
Absolutely. But okay, because I don't know who you see, who you don't see, but I'm sure that you have access to some pros, and when you go to the gym and you look, I don't see anybody train. I mean, it's just beyond me to understand that, you know. And then besides from aesthetic standpoint, if you go to the bodybuilding contest, and it doesn't matter if it's classic physique or men's physique or bodybuilding, or it doesn't matter, boom. If you just glance for, you have 10 seconds to look. I guarantee you, your eyes are gonna go for the you know, best midsection. Yeah, you need that V-taper, X-frame, you know, whatever. But it's 6 little symmetrical muscles in the you know, center of your body. It's the biggest attraction. You just go for it. And whoever is listening right now, of course, let's face it. I don't know if your audience is you know, bodybuilders or just you know, people that train. I said this at the muscular development interview, and a lot of people judge me, but I said this: there's no way anybody is going to convince me that if any man can choose to be skinny, fat, or muscular, they're going to say, oh, I want to be skinny. Oh, I want to be fat. Right? So you want to be muscular. Maybe you don't want to be at the size level of a pro bodybuilder, but you want to be muscular. And one of the biggest traits for muscular physiques, abs. right? So I think everybody should pay attention to their abs. They should train them. There is so much benefits, like say core strength, you know, and it's functional muscle, and it's a beautiful muscle. It's something that I think if somebody is listening to this should, you know, probably make that little change. I suggest at the beginning of the workout, because it's a good core warm up anyway, right? Before you do anything else, 3 supersets, hanging leg raises, high pulley cable crunches, as many as you can. First day, if you do 10 and 10, then you're going to work it up to 15, 15, 20, 20, and so on. It's 5 minutes at the most and makes all the difference.
One thing that I think I'd add in, I've changed very much the way I do hanging leg raises recently. And one of those things is really focusing on, like you said, almost doing like a sort of a vacuum in before you start every rep. And the other thing is also getting my pelvis in line, and actually I'm doing a huge amount of work to loosen off my hips, because my hips are so tight that my hip flexors will just fire all the time. And that's automatically, now my hips aren't tight. My hips are in the proper position, and now it's like a completely different exercise, and my midsection has completely changed shape.
Perfect advice. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's you know, great description. And whoever is doing it, please listen to the Charlie's advice. Exactly. You overcome both things. Yeah, with this, reduce the hip flexion, hip flexors involvement, and you're focusing on your abs. You know, so you do like kind of vacuum, which obviously to do that you have to tighten up your midsection. And yeah, it's a perfect advice. And I don't know why, you know, not too many people do it. Back in the day, Serge Nubret, for example, and Robbie Robinson, and you name it, Arnold Franco, Frank Zane, they were all doing it, right? It's like, it was kind of routine. And I don't know what changes throughout the years. Like already in the 90s, I mean, I do remember talking to, and Sean had a great ab, right? And we talked about it, instead of, okay, we have a good abs, we don't need to train them. No, fool. If you have something exceptionally good, make it even better, make it stand out. You know, so if you have, you know, already great abs, don't get lazy. Don't get, oh, I don't need it. Yes, you do. You know, abs is something that you should train for life.
100%. In talking about mobility and stretching, is that something you did much work on during your career, or are you always fairly mobile?
Yeah, no, you see, because I was in the judo, you know, like I started with this, so I was very mobile. I was able to stretch. I don't know if you watched my
Serbian Ninja.
Yeah, well, listen, I was doing splits during my posing routines back in early 90s, and then when I tore my hamstring doing a stiff leg deadlifts, and then second time doing a heavy leg curls, laying leg curls, and then third time, you know, heavy standing leg curls. It's just amazing. 3 times I tore my hamstring, but at that time I limited a little bit. But if anybody is telling me stretching is not important, what do we always want to accomplish in any exercise, any muscle contraction, right? We want to have a full range of motion. So if you can really stretch it and, you know, have a more mobility, and you can stretch more chest, more quads, more anything, obviously it's going to be more stimulation, you know, because we do need that maximal stretching, maximal shortening, lengthening, shortening. And a lot of people are way too stiff, never stretch. And I've seen this even with the top pros.
It's interesting you say that, because one of the big things I've noticed is that, talk about, say, hip flexors again as an example, is that obviously muscles work in agonists and antagonists in terms of opposites, that now my hip flexors are now fully mobile, that I can now get my hamstring fully short, because when my hips were so tight beforehand, it wouldn't allow me to get into that range of motion to get, say, for example, a lying hamstring curl to the fully shortened position with control.
Yeah. You see, I don't know if we touched that at that training camp in Orpington, but probably didn't, because I didn't have time. One of the things I would always like to implement also is that stretch overload. So for any muscle, if it's chest and back and legs, you get into that super stretch position with a heavy load, and then you hold that static contraction. And you see, I never really believe in this hyperplasia, you know, what they talk about. I believe in hypertrophy, the cell proliferation, all that stuff. But really, are we making a new muscle tissue, like they say, new muscle fibers, hyperplasia? And when you do read the studies, all these studies, okay, and the birds, you know, this avian species, but interestingly, it's always in stretch overload type of stimulation. So, you know, for that reason, I said, like, okay, let me, you know, try to do this. And I applied it in many exercises. They're comfortable, that you can reach that safe overstretch, and with a crazy load. And it's very effective, you know, for both mobility and for hypertrophy. It is something, I don't, on the hamstring, I don't know if you had an issue. Yeah, I would probably, do on a laying leg curls, you know, that super load in a completely stretched position, you know, stopping short of, you know, resting it on the machine. But try to do this for 30, 45, 60 seconds. It's phenomenal stimulation.
Yeah, it's agonizing. I find personally that won't tend to work particularly well with back exercises as well, for stretching your lats, like almost just like weighted hanging from a bar, for example.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. John Meadows used to do some crazy stuff. I watched his videos. Yeah. Have you seen his under the rack bend over rows?
Yeah.
Yeah, when he limits it, and then like he squeezes for like 30 seconds and his face is going to explode. You know, what an animal. I mean, he's really an unbelievable trainer.
Yeah, if you know John, I've been trying to put some pressure on trying to get him onto the podcast. So I'm a big fan of his as well. So it'd be a pleasure to catch
him. He never came. I'll send him a message. Yeah,
I appreciate that. Next, in terms of questions for you, Milos, in terms of obviously your intra-workout insulin protocol with muscle building we talked about previously, how does that differ more in a fat loss phase?
Okay, so you see,
or do you keep that the same and just try and protect muscle tissue?
Absolutely the same. And a lot of people would say, you have a different protocols. No, that's my anabolic phase. What does it mean, anabolic phase? You know, this is when I have opportunity that hyperemia, increased blood flow to the muscle is coming. If it's saturated with all the anabolic nutrients, right? And then I elevate glucose level, you know, have my pancreas release insulin. Insulin is going to shove everything from that blood into the first available tissues and cells, and it's going to be muscle tissue, muscle cells. Each contraction is going to, you know, push it in. So I always talk about maximal benefits. So my anabolic phase, regardless if I'm off season, just any day, or pre-contest fat loss, my anabolic phase is still anabolic phase. This is a time that I would, you know, have to have my, you know, carbs and all the essential aminos and all that stuff. Ideally, the only time when I would differ from that, okay, now if I would put somebody in a ketogenic diet, keto diet, and then I really wouldn't want to get out of ketosis, you know, then I would have to get out my carbs from it. But it would, for me, be the purpose. It's not going to be maximized, it's going to be compromised. But for some people, you know, they're really way off, and you have emergency measures, and you have to do keto diet. Let's face it, in a short explanation, keto diet is very effective for fat loss, but absolutely catastrophic for hypertrophy. You know, you cannot build a muscle on a keto diet.
I was going to ask your opinion of that, to be fair, because that's very much mine. Obviously, if you think about it logically, the way the body's designed is glycogen and glucose is fuel for muscles to contract. So it doesn't seem to make much sense to me in terms of why people would go down the keto route, unless, as you said, it was a worst case scenario almost. But then in my opinion, I'd rather they went very low carbohydrate and just lower the calories from anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, but this is one of those examples when I said that encouraging people knowing the answer, ignoring it and doing the wrong things. Like you said, glycogen or glucose, okay? And then if you don't have neither glycogen nor glucose in a keto diet, right? Ketones would be produced, but also, you know, muscle is going to be broken down and into gluconeogenesis. It give you some aminos guarantee. You know, when you look just 20 amino acids that we have, 2 are ketogenic, right? Lysine and leucine. And then you have this PITTT, phenylalanine, isoleucine, threonine, tryptophan, and whichever I forget, threonine. Those are both glycogenic and ketogenic. So some amino acids, yeah, converted to ketones, yes. But majority of are going to turn into the glucose, guarantee. So I'm going to purposely now catabolize my muscle. I'm not going to take any carbs. I'm not going to, I have 0 glycogen already. I'm depleted after the 3rd day of, but now I'm going to burn my muscles, because the only thing that you can, you know, get this would be muscle tissue. So for me, it doesn't make sense. Do you get lean on a keto diet? Yes, you do. But this is what I was watching since 1970s, 80s, 90s. There would be guys, you know, typically they compete in a 70 kilo class or 80 kilo class, right? And then their whole year they're changing it, and then come back again into the same category for 10 years. I mean, you just trained for 10 years, day in, day out, all this stuff, and you didn't make any progress. Why? Because they would, boom, go in those crash diets, usually ketogenic diets, right? And we are all just humans. You know, when you crave and crave and crave, you're hungry, and then contest is over, what do? Whoa, you know, food free for all, pig out, right? And then, like I said, your metabolism is shut down. You know, your body's going to just be like a sponge. And then once you gain all this, you know, weight, but it's some muscle and tons of fat, then you're going to start dieting for a next show. And then you're going to have to be dramatic, because, okay, I'm going to just go back on keto. And this is what happens. I mean, realistically, we talk, okay, fat adapted, carb adapted, and the metabolic flexibility. Look, all of us would be flexible enough if you have a carbs when you need carbs, right? I mean, we can even, I actually get a very good device, the Lumen, right? And it really tells you, you know, with the, you know, how much carbon dioxide you breathe out if you're burning mostly carbs or fat, yeah? It's a very useful tool. But bottom line is still caloric requirement. If you can use carbs and lose body fat, right? If you create a caloric deficit. But in general, all the population, I think we touched the subject last time. I'm going to just repeat it again. My 24-hour diet would be based on training has to be anabolic phase. And this is when I have a lot of lean protein and easily absorbable amino acids with the carbs. Carbs could be simple carbs, glucose, because we're going to need that glucose, you know, to elevate blood sugar levels during a training. So meal before, it can be some starchy complex carbs, but intra-workout should be simple. You know, you don't want to wait, you know, for polysaccharide to be broken down, just simple carbs. This is the time when you build muscle. If I need to burn body fat, I'm going to create fat burning phase maybe in the morning or twice. But the remainder of the meals should be maintenance phase. And for granted, it's much easier to control your weight if you do it with protein and fats rather than carbs. Because you see, as soon as you touch the carbs, your blood sugar level increases, pancreas releases insulin, insulin's in the bloodstream. It's not selective. So if you have, you know, lingering around, you know, triglycerides and the glucose and amino acids, it's going to store everything. And throughout the day, blood is not in the muscle. So it can store in fat depots. So unless you're lucky, like I said, with you, myself, some other athletes that can utilize both carbs and fat, and no problem. Unless you're one of those lucky ones, it's easy for you as a coach, me as a coach, to tell the general population, you know, have a lean protein, you know, any kind of proteins with good fats throughout the day, except when you're training, because when you're training, as you said, we need the glucose as a fuel. That's when we are doing. And at this period of time, we're going to stop fat burning. Okay, we will. But our goal right here is to anabolize, build. This is that anabolic phase. It would last like maybe 4 hours during the day. The remainder of the day, maintain or burn fat. And that's what is much easier with protein and fats without the carbs.
Question for you as well. I know I had the pleasure of attending your event in MuscleWorks. You mentioned in terms for a mass building side of things, adding in amino shakes between meals. Is that something you would do again during a fat loss phase to protect going catabolic?
Yes. Okay. And I hope that your audience understand what you said. Even in a fat burning diet, I would use same principle as in my building diet, that in between meals, I would have a extra addition of essential amino acids and glutamine. Okay, so in between meals, if your meals are 3-4 hours apart, then every hour and a half after, or 2 hours after the meal, I would add like 10 grams of EAAs, 10 grams of glutamine, or woman, maybe 5 and 5. Why? I would always want to ensure influx of amino acids. So 24 hours a day, I have it floating around my amino acids needed for all the physiological needs, not just for muscle. But when we look at it, protein is the only building material, and it has various functions. It's not just for lean tissue, enzymes, hormones, all kinds of stuff. Tissues are necessarily built from all that protein. If I have available throughout the day, then protein synthesis occurs for any tissue that is needed. If it's a limited amount, a muscle tissue is last on the list of priorities. The protein, those amino acids, going to be integrated in everything else first, and then whatever is left over, if enough, it will go to the muscle tissue. This is how it normally works. So what I like to implement is, constant influx of amino acids. Because let's face it, if you have eggs or a beef or a chicken or a turkey or whatever, protein source that you're taking, you're going to have to digest it. And it takes hour and a half, 2, 3, 4 hours sometimes to break it down, that peptide protein that you're eating, into the amino acids. So for that reason, I like to, what I call, fortify my diet with extra amino acids. Thank you for remembering that. This is what I do.
Would you ever do anything like that during the night out of interest? Or would you ever try to use slower digesting? From your smile, I'm going to guess you've tried things like this.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I think I said this in a few podcasts. Back in 87, 88, when I came, I would do alarm, the cheap clock, the $20 Chinese clock, the watch, and every 3 hours it would be alarm. Midnight, 3 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, and on and on and on. Back in those times, you couldn't really get the amino acids. It was not available, but you could get the protein shakes, right? So I was having my protein shakes midnight. Alarm goes off 3 o'clock, and a lot of people would say, well, but you disrupt your resting and hypertrophy, that can occur during your resting period. I mean, I was so trained that I could just alarm clock, gulp it down and be right back to sleep. Do I do this to most of my athletes? No, I would give them right before they go to sleep, still amino acids as a last thing before they go to sleep. But I would not disrupt their sleeping pattern, because nowadays, let's face it, 20 years ago, there was not as much stress as nowadays. Now everybody's stressed for whatever
particularly with
reason,
COVID
right?
at the moment, I think.
Yeah, this is just a bonus plan on top of everything. Yeah, but again, my general view on protein intake is, I was always very high on protein, and a lot of people said, Milos, this is ludicrous. I was taking 4 grams of protein per pound, right, or up to 2 grams per kilo, right? I said, that's not necessary, not, all these studies and all. I said, listen, when I did 1 gram per pound and then raise it to 2, and I get much greater gains, and I raise it to 3, and I get even more gains, and I raise it to 4 and get more gains, what do you think I'm going to listen to? my own experience or what books tell me, what some scientist or researcher that did what. It took 10 subjects and they put them on this little thing, and then they come up with, there's no more muscle protein synthesis in a group that have a higher protein. Oh, you failed to mention that they actually didn't exercise. They're just regular people. I say, if you want to talk about scientific studies, please go to Mr. Olympia, pick 10 guys and test them and put them on, 1 gram per kilo or 2 grams per kilo, and see who's going to gain more. So, for me, it was always very logical. Building material, only building macronutrient is protein, broken down in the constituents, amino acids. I have to have sufficient amino acids in the bloodstream at all times. Because let's just a little bit be technical. Right now, your body would have a reason to synthesize muscle tissue, protein muscle synthesis. He would have it because you're stimulated, and now body wants to build it. Well, you're gonna have to you pair all the amino acids, structure of muscle protein. So he's gonna have to find for example, lysine, and then messenger RNA goes and finds it, and transport RNA brings it there. And then the next one, right? Arginine finds it, brings it. And this one. So it just goes and finds. So non-essential amino acids could be manufactured in the body, okay? So needed body manufacturers, but essential cannot. So right now you need methionine and it is not available. Process stops until it's available. So why would I, compromise my growth? I said, maybe I have it, maybe I don't have it. Oh, well, I hope I'm lucky. Luck is not for champions. Champions make their own luck. Okay, so if I want to make sure that I have a sufficient amount of all the amino acids, especially essential amino acids, at all times, so I cannot compromise my muscle growth, that's what I would do. And I don't know if you had some of your guests and doctors that would always talk about, it's unnecessary to take so much protein. Did you ever try it, right? I had one of my heroes is a mixed martial artist, Mirko Filipovic Krokap from Croatia, right? And he posted something on Instagram that just struck me. Like, well, he says 1 gram of practice is heavier than 1 ton of theory, okay? And because he's also himself, analyzed, investigate, applies, and yeah, he hears the theory, but who does the theory?
There's a saying I love, and it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. And the anecdotal evidence, the way you look, the way your clients look, and it's all great for some scientist who's never stepped in the gym to say something, but then there's no substance a lot of the time to practically back that up, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that, look, I know that you educate yourself, you do the research, you apply your knowledge, and knowledge is power only if applied, right? But what's the difference from leaders and followers? Followers follow what they're told, okay? Or this is the established road, it's cement, you just go this way. Here is a grass nobody have went through. Who's gonna take that road? You don't know where it ends. Well, I will, right? I'm gonna try apply something new and see. Maybe this is, how they say there are many roads that lead to Rome. Yeah, but one is most efficient, fastest all the way. But if you just do because somebody 2,000 years ago, 3,000, went this way, well, how about this one? Ooh, don't do it. Why? So this is how I would do everything as far as training and diet, nutrition, supplementation. If it makes sense, okay, please try it. And now, of course, what's the worst thing that can happen? Oh, it didn't work. Well, I was encouraged by my father since I was a kid, which was probably the greatest thing that he told me. Oh, yeah, making mistakes is great. Make mistakes so you'll learn from mistakes. But really, I see a lot of my friends here in the United States Oh, they're terrified of making mistakes because the parents, punish them and make fun of them for making mistakes. And I think that really, when you think about it, especially for young people, the way my father explained it to me, I was looking forward to make a mistake. Oh yeah, I made a mistake. I learned something.
So that's saying you win or you learn.
Yeah. That's Conor McGregor's book, right?
Yeah, I think so. You mentioned there, Milos, in regards to champions. Do you have anyone you're working with at the moment who you're particularly excited about? I know you're working with a friend of mine, Ryan Crowley, for his last show. Is there anyone else you're working with?
He's a young prospect. I have as you know, I was preparing Max Charles this year, and I'm a big fan of Max. I still think he's way underrated. That if you really analyze his physique, he's muscular aesthetic freak, which means he has that aesthetic shape, wide shoulders, big arms, small waist, crazy abs. He needs a little bit more legs, but it's not missing as much as some of the people want to believe. He does have enough muscle mass. So I have high plans with him this year. He showed up in the first 4 shows. It was greatest conditioning, everything was there. For Olympia prejudging, we missed it a little bit. For finals, we were good, but it was not enough. So here's one of them. I have some. A lot of people are not aware of Iranian bodybuilders. So one that I'm particularly excited is that Bakruz Tabani. I posted just a couple of times pictures. I still want to keep him a little bit on Instagram as a secret, but we are right now deciding which show to do. He has that spectacular physique. I promise you, if you see him, you're going to say, oh my God. He was a world champion like 3 years ago, but then turned to pro and we still didn't do the pro debut. Aesthetics is, I think, what should rule. When you have that V-taper, X-frame, round muscle bellies, cartoonish superhero character, these are kind of things. That I have also from Saudi Arabia, Fahad Azizi. I had some not maybe famous names yet, but we hope to make the names. Ryan Crowley, he's a young potential. I told him at this point is unfortunate for him to be so tall, but on the long run, it's going to be his advantage. Now is a disadvantage, right? But when he fills up that frame, he's going to be like Arnold and Franco, right? Arnold would say, taller, bigger, muscular man would always beat the smaller, muscular man. So, and I have a lot of prospects on a pro level, but they still didn't do the pro debut. This COVID thing really ruined it. Like, I can't tell you, I probably had like about 30 athletes training for the show that was canceled. And me being a pro for 12 years and competing in all these shows, one time only, I was training for this contest and it was canceled, Florida, 1 year. And I remember I was so bummed and devastated, right? Now these guys, they were preparing since, March after Arnold Classic, right? There was so many shows. We are peaking for it. They are ready for it. And then canceled. Okay, we're going to do the next one. It's canceled. And I don't know how many shows are canceled. It's ridiculous. Now, this year, as you know, Arnold Classic is moved to some later date. We still have no idea. Olympia, we still have no idea when it's going to be. So it is really tough to stay motivated under these circumstances,
Do you have most of your athletes then going into an off season at the moment, just trying to add more size on it, providing they can train?
Yeah, but I think we touched that subject also. I never really believed in off season as a word. Off really turns me off, because
a muscle growth phase.
Because you see, when you have that, you have an instantly license to be off in any possible way, off my diet, off, you know, so, oh yeah.
It's like the word cheat meal, I think. It's stupid.
Yes, yes, but, you know, as it goes, usually cheat meal goes into the cheat day. And then, you know, one day it becomes two, and then I'm not so clean. I mean, I have a lot of clients that when they, you know, come to me to prepare them, I always ask, I'm always everything on time. What time you wake up, what time you train, what time you go to bed. And then I structure everything. We talk about meals accordingly, amino acids accordingly. So give me your present diet. Oh, you know, I haven't been really following a diet. I said, okay, so what do you mean? Oh, I've been eating whatever. I mean, really, and this is how most of the people approach off season. I'm free to eat whatever. Calories is not going to build the muscle, you know. So yeah, if my off season, okay, it's planned caloric surplus. I'm going to make sure you have all the protein, and I'm going to make sure you have carbs when you need them, okay? And I'm going to make sure you don't have a overload of fat that you're going to gain 10 pounds of muscle and 20 pounds of fat. What did you do then? You know, so for me, if you follow my career, I competed from 1991 until 1999. I did these 72 shows, which is, you know, I was constantly on. And the biggest gains I made is immediately after the contest, right? When you maybe have to be a little bit on a calorie restriction and some deficit. Now I no longer need to be in a deficit, and I want to, like, obviously I want to grow. So I would allow myself what I think is my caloric requirement plus extra 500 calories from a good nutrients. And then I realized, oh, this is good, and I'm not gaining any, you know, body fat. Okay, maybe I can bump it up for another 200-300. So it's controlled. Most of us, we don't know, but we can really get away with it, right? Like right now, if I say, Charlie, okay, I want you to build as much muscle as possible, right? And let's structure the diet. You would be somewhat careful, somewhat restricted. But if I only give you good protein, good carbs, and very, very low fat, okay? What are the chances that you're gonna put body fat? Okay, so this is maybe a very good subject to touch. A lot of people believe that carbs will be converted and stored as a fat. And I think I talk about this in our training camp, that de novo lipogenesis, conversion of carbohydrates into the fat, is not efficient in humans. It doesn't happen. And back in the day when I was doing this clinical nutrition and reading it, I said, like, oh, shit, carbs convert into the fat. Yeah, really, because we are told so. So all these no-carb diets, you lose body fat, great. Oh, carbs are the enemies. But if you don't have high fat, you have a very low fat. And my diet, when you look at back in the day, I was doing 500 grams of protein, 700 grams of carbs, and my fat was 30 grams, just hidden fat in my, you know, in my food. And I could push it. So carbs are very inefficient in conversion. Carbs are not going to convert into fat. And if you go to some clinical nutrition researchers, they say possibly maximally 10% of carbohydrate calories can be converted into fat. Oh, what does that mean? If you take 1,000 grams of carbs, that's 100 grams of carbs, 400 calories, for example, right? Under normal circumstances, we would think, oh, this is going to be, you're going to turn into the fat slab. So I had hundreds of guys to experiment with, myself included, right? So I would get them super high protein, super high carbs, minimal fats. And they would hardly ever pick up any body fat that is concerning, right? Yeah, of course, when you have so much carbs and you have a fully loaded glycogen, you're holding a little bit more water and all that stuff. But carbohydrates do not convert into the fat like people believe it, because of this, well, no carb craze, Atkins diet, keto diet, this, you know, especially in a working athlete, muscle building athlete, we need carbs. You said it yourself, either glycogen or glucose, yeah? I'm going to make sure that I have enough glycogen and glucose. If I deplete the glycogen during a training, I'm going to again replenish it, you know, afterwards. But I'm going to work on the fuel carbs that my body needs it. We were talking today, subject was fuel for cardio is fat. Yeah, and that time have fats. You know, so the first part of the interview, we talk about fat burning is different. At that time, I won substrate of utilization, right? To be fat, fatty acids, no problem. But off season, we're talking about, for a bodybuilder, I would reduce your fats to nothing. I would, you know, much rather, you know, have you on 600, 700, 800,000 grams of carbs than, you know, get to 300, 400 with whatever fats.
I agree completely. And to be honest with you, I'd rather eat the carbs anyway. And it's something I've noticed heavily myself, that I can push my carbs very high and keep my fats down. My body responds much better to that.
Perfect. Can you tell your audience, like, how much carbs you're talking about daily?
So not super high, but for my body weight, like 500 a day.
Yeah.
Before guys, I was up to like 700. My activity is pretty low because I work from home other than training.
Yeah.
So for me, that's pretty decent. And I'm just trying to gradually take that up now and try and keep body fat down.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're a perfect example of advice we're trying to give to the audience. If you're a bodybuilder inspiring that you want to, you know, put some muscle size, Charlie, how much you weigh?
95 kilos.
95 kilos.
Very
okay.
light, small.
Yeah, well, that's good. You're not small by no means, and you're very muscular, in great shape. 500 grams of carbs. I know a lot of pro bodybuilders that take less. And when I feel like, you know, for the love of God, you know how they look at me? They look at me, oh, here it is, you know, Milos, insulin guy and carb guy and all that. No, I am nutrient guy, nutrient. I don't take this for it. I take carbs because bodybuilder needs, muscle needs carbs as a fuel, right? And it's a glycogen. You want to have a fully loaded, you know, muscle tissue that the skin is bursting because there's so much glycogen filled. How are you going to get that glycogen? From eating 300-400 grams of carbs? That's what most of the people do, 300-400. How much glycogen and carbs, you know, you're going to burn in a really intense training? Intense training. And that's first time I learned about that was from Charles Poliquin, because, you know, since 96, you know, we did, okay, so he said, okay, Milos, estimate how much glucose or glycogen you burn in 1 hour of intense training. So I didn't have a studies, right? You know, it's just like, okay, 100, 250. I says, no, it's a 200. And then if you remember back in the day, Charles, in the early 90s, he would suggest like 200 grams of pure dextrose immediately after training. And rationale behind it is you burn 200 grams of glycogen, you get that, you know, 200 grams of dextrose and the insulin dump, you know, to push it right back in. So if anything like this, and some researchers can possibly say I'm wrong or right, they can find those studies. But if you train, like we train, you know, in Orpington gym, you you burn 150 to 200 grams.
I think it felt like it was a lot more than that, if I'm honest.
Probably. I mean,
the psychological stress afterwards.
So you burn 200 right there. Your brain needs 500 calories, 125 grams of glucose to function properly. If you're not going to have obviously ketones, we're not going to go with the ketones. We feed our brain with the glucose. That's 125. That's 325 already. So if you are taking 400 grams of carbs, you know, in your mass building cycle, what do you think you're going to build? You know, because you're 24 hours, you know, based on metabolic rate and everything else that you do requires way more. So this is why I was saying, when they structured the diet, many are afraid to push for it. I wasn't. So I was okay. I do this much and I inspect what I expect. Oh, I gain, but I feel a little flattish. Maybe I can do a little bit more. Next day, I increase the carbs and then increase the carbs. So as I told you, I was eating 500 to 700 grams of carbs regularly, but there was many times I was doing even over 1,000. If you ask Jay Cutler, he was going well over 1,000 and making a great gains. You know, of course, everything is individual, but if you once and for all master your metabolism, you, what we talked about from the beginning, you have a frequent meals in nutrient, not calorie based, cover all the bases. You're going to see how much more I can take. And instead of off season, just eating whatever, it's planned, protein and carbs, amounts, times, because timing is important, and amount. It's easily absorbable. It takes more time, but protein-wise, I cover this with all these amino acids in between meals. So even if you take beef that takes forever to be digested, those amino acids gonna pick up later. But in the meantime, I'm gonna have quick amino acids from other meals and my essential amino acid fortification. So, carbs. If you calculate that your Charlie, what is your caloric requirement daily? Did you calculate it? BMR?
It's about 3,500 is probably what I need for maintenance.
3,500, perfect. Okay, and I'm slow in the math right now. If you divide this by 24 hours, what would be 150 calories an hour?
Something like that. I will use
that. So if you eat every 3 hours, it would be 450 calories, for example. But this is if you're going to stay up throughout the night like I was, midnight, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock. If you're not, you lower this to awaken hours and then divide it, right? So whatever caloric requirement is, you take your protein and add, carbs to equal that part. This is how I would, pretty much do it. And then, of course, anabolic phase training, it's much higher, and maintenance phase could be just maintaining it.
100%. Absolute pleasure as always, Milos, and a pile of advice which I thoroughly appreciate, and I could talk to you for hours on, but I don't want to keep you too long. So we'll make that wrap there. For anyone to find out some more information about you and share some of the progress, obviously, with your amazing athletes, where's the best place for them to get in touch to follow you?
Yeah, my social media, Instagram is at Milos Sarcev, MILOS SARCEV, or my Facebook page. I have a Milos Sarcev official. I have a private, both Milos Sarcev or Sarcev Milos, my private Facebook. But nowadays, for whatever reason, Instagram is probably the easiest access. You check this all the time. Yeah. I'm afraid to say how much screen time every day.
It's bad. It's bad. I blame COVID, but there we go.
Yeah. Yes. Well, Charlie, it's really a pleasure talking to you. I know that you signed up for that training camp that didn't happen, unfortunately. But I'll see how things go, and hopefully I'm going to come back again to UK.
If I said this to you last time, if British people are ever allowed into America ever again, which is looking unlikely at this rate, I'll fly over for a week, and I'd love to train with you for a week. It'd be awesome. So we'll make that happen.
You know that I moved to Las Vegas.
Yeah. Vegas is even better. It's easier than LA. So there you go. 100%.
Yes, it's absolutely. Listen, we'll be in touch. And like I said, when was the last time we did it? About a year ago?
Yeah, it's about a year ago.
Yeah. So we should do it traditionally at least once a year.
2022. Keep tuned. Thank you very much, Milos.
Okay, Charlie. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. So that was an absolutely incredible episode of The Shredder Show, again, with a great, great friend and mentor, Milos Sarcev, one of the world's most famous and classic bodybuilders. Hugely knowledgeable, hugely respected, an absolute pleasure as always. If you haven't checked out the previous episode I did with Milos, that was absolutely insane. It was Maximal muscle building. We actually recorded that last year. So as Milos said, we're going to make this, I think, a yearly tradition. Pretty much every springtime that myself and Milos do a podcast together. So if you scroll back through the podcast list, it's episode number 95. I'd highly suggest checking that out. Phenomenal episode and well worth a listen. As always, if you found this insightful, please make sure you share this episode to your stories. Tag myself and Milos in the podcast. We'd highly appreciate that. And also, please leave a 5-star review, as it helps me get more amazing guests to help bring to you, to provide you with more knowledge and insights to help you with your own fitness journey. If you want any help from me directly, there's a couple of ways I can help. Please click the link below, and you can also book in a free 6-pack strategy call with myself, the CJ coaching team, to discuss how we can help you in 2021 build your ultimate physique. And I've also got my free Absolute Abs training course you can sign up for, which is a 3-week training program for ultimate abs. We'll see you in the next episode of the podcast, and please make sure you leave a review.